I'm doing a reaction video because, yeah. I'm probably gonna do reaction videos until December, probably. Um, I'm not sure if I'll upload these daily. I'll probably will because they're just easier to make. But we're gonna react to top 10 honest like effects by the theduelLogs because I haven't watched it yet. So here we go. Let me see sound. I'm gonna turn this. If the sound is super loud, I'll turn it down on here. All right. No Pfeiffer. Might have to. All right. I'm gonna move the face cam. I can move the face cam up here.
In this video,
There
we'll be
we
going
go.
over cards with honest-like effects,
All right,
which are
here we
basically
go.
cards with hand trap effects that affect the battle in some way, usually in the form of extra attack points, but not always. And at number 10, we'll just start off
Buffering.
with Honest, since his entire list is kind of named after him. Now, this card popularized the effect of giving an incredible attack boost from the hand during the battle phase.
Yeah, definitely.
As what it does is, if one of your light monsters battles,
give it
you can send this card
2500
from your hand to the
attack.
graveyard to let your monster gain.
Yeah, Honest is a good card. I don't typically use it because I don't use light monsters a whole lot.
The attack of your opponent's monster until the end of the turn. So basically, it allowed any of
Deal
your
with the
light
quality,
monsters
I'm
to
not
beat over
changing it.
any of your opponent's monsters.
My internet's good.
And also allowed you to protect any of your light monsters from attacks during your opponent's turn. But that's not all. The effect would stack.
This is gonna buffer a lot.
On itself, as it wasn't once per turn. So if you had 3 honest effects during the same battle phase, they would all just stack on top of each other, which is why this card was put on the ban list in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh! That way people can get lucky wins if they happen to draw 3 copies of honest. And since the effect
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that would be really OP. I never played Yu-Gi-Oh! Back in the day.
lasted until the end of the turn, if you used it on a card like a Sewer Priest, you could keep that incredible attack boost for all of its attacks, as that card could attack all of your opponent's monsters once each. So just attacking your opponent's strongest monster first, and then using Honest would allow it to keep that high attack boost for all the other attacks, and possibly win you the game. Honest was just a super strong card in the early days of the game, and rarely sees play nowadays because the game doesn't really revolve around the battle phase like that anymore. Unless a card from an archetype just
I wouldn't say that
happens to also
completely,
have an honest
but
effect.
alright.
And at number 9, we have Bujinji Crane. This was the honest specific card for the Bujin archetype, which was all.
I used Bujin. I didn't use Bujinji cards, but I used the Bujin cards. They're pretty good. You have to get off specific plays with them, though.
about protecting Bujin Yamato, who would allow you to selectively fill up your graveyard with Bujin monsters while also keeping copies of Bujinji Crane in your hand. As what Crane did was if one of your Bujin Beast Warrior type monsters attacked, you could send this card from your hand to the graveyard to double that monster's original attack, and only during damage calculation, so it wouldn't last
Okay.
until the end phase like Honest. Now, since the Bujin archetype is full of light monsters, they could also use Honest, but the advantage Crane had was that it could be searched out a lot easier and was a more reliable attack option, even if Honest.
Okay. So it's basically Honest for
This
Bujin
was still
cards.
technically more useful, although it's not like Bujin players didn't use both of them. The Bujin archetype did have a rank 4 monster called Bujin Te Susanoo.
Yeah, they did. It was interesting.
Who could attack all of your opponent's monsters once each, which is great with Honest-like effects, but since Bujinji Crane only worked for one battle, it couldn't really be abused like a Sewer Priest. Although another benefit to Bujinji Crane was that it would reset their attack at the end of the damage, which meant if one of your monsters got their attack lowered by an opponent's Blackwing Gale the Whirlwind, for example,
Yeah.
using Crane would still give them double their original attack, and then at the end of that battle, it would just go back to their original attack. So the Bujin archetype could largely
That's
negate
useful.
attack modifiers thanks to their Honest specific card. Although this
I mean, I wish Blackwings were still relevant. Konami, give them new support. They deserve it. The last support we got was like from Arc 5. And the Assault Blackwings, the only one that's really
card is
good
kind of too
is
balanced. It's not once per turn. You
Rain
could use
Sterling.
it multiple
Or
times if
Sprinkler,
you had other
whatever.
copies.
Whatever that one's name is, I don't know. And Carry the Rain Shower is fine. It's not great. It's fine.
But the effect itself is done in a way where you can't stack them in the same attack, which is a theme you'll see with a lot of the other cards in this list. Basically, Konami acknowledged the mistake of being able to stack Honest, so all of the cards that were based on it afterwards have all kinds of effects and limitations to that potential.
Yeah.
Save a few
You
of them
don't
which
want
were created
like
around
an
the same
Honest
time
for
period
every
as
archetype.
Honest.
That would be
And
nuts.
at number 8, we have Score, the Melodious Diva. This
Oh,
card has the
Melodious
effect
Divas.
that
I'm
if one of
actually
your
considering
Melodious
building a
monsters
deck on
battles,
one
you can
of
send this
these.
card from your hand to the graveyard to make your opponent's
Considering making a deck on Melodious Divas, but
monster have 0
debating
attack and
it.
defense until the end of the turn. Now, out of all of the Honest-like effects, most of them don't affect your opponent's monster. They usually boost your own monster in some way.
Yeah.
So this one can actually be stacked with Honest, as a lot of the Melodious monsters are light attribute. Although
I
you'd
do
have
have
to
that
be
card. I do have this,
careful
like,
about which order
this
you
one.
use them, since
This
Honest
one right here, I do have that one. I have a Melodious Diva. I have one Melodious Diva. In real life, yeah, I have this one. It's really torn up though, and it's in a card sleeve for protection.
This does give you the attack equal to your opponent's monster's current attack, and not their original attack. Now, Melodious monsters are not a very battle-focused archetype, and one of their strengths is the fact that they're very hard to defeat. So this card does give them a little bit of an
Very
archetype-specific
battle-focused.
way of actually destroying your opponent's monsters by battle, which is something they kind of lack, and would allow you to beat over pretty much any monster that you use the effect on, assuming they're not unaffected by card effects like Ultimate Falcon.
Ultimate Falcon's
so Bujinji Crane
OP.
could allow you to beat over almost anything with doubling of the attack. But Score the Melodious Diva allows you to beat over anything that isn't unaffected by card effects.
Ultimate Falcon is just OP. It's too good. If you've ever used Raid Raptors, you always want to put Ultimate Falcon in there, because that thing is just nuts.
Which is why I only give it a slightly higher spot on this list. And at number 7,
Number 7.
we have Blackwing Kalute the Moon
Another
Shadow.
Blackwing.
This card is
I don't think I use this one in my Blackwing deck, but it gains 1400 attack, yeah. It's pretty cool.
specific to the Blackwing archetype and has the effect where, if a Blackwing monster is in a battle, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard to have your monster gain 1400 attack until the end of the turn. Now, what's unique about Colute is that it gives a very specific amount of attack instead of an attack being dependent on which monsters you're battling, as it always gives you 1400 attack. And
it will always give you 400 attack.
Also, this effect does stack in the same way as Honest. You could absolutely use multiple Colutes on top of each other in order to give a high amount of attack, up to 4200 attack if you stack 3 of them, which was a pretty standard move in Blackwing decks, since that deck is very efficient at searching out cards from that deck thanks to Blackwing Whirlwind, and Blackwing monsters were very adept at battling. They had Blue Flame, which could allow you to special summon Blackwings from the deck if it destroyed monsters by battle. There's even Bora the Spear, which could deal piercing damage and special summon itself from the hand. So if you boosted it to a high attack power value and it attacked over a low defense monster, that was a good way to sometimes seal off a winning game. And even Sirocco the Dawn, which could combine the attack of all of your Blackwings into one monster,
that was
which
in
could
Legacy
then
of
just
the
beat over
Duelist.
anything your opponent controls, and then use a couple of Colutes from your hand to deal the extra amount of damage needed in order to win. Colute just worked very well with the deck, to the point where it was thought of as kind of broken in Blackwings, and even appeared on the ban list for a while, even though it strictly would give it a less attack
Go
boost
for the
than
Vague
Honest
Shadow,
most
I
of the time.
believe, is
I'm pretty
banned
sure it's
right now.
because of Colute and Honest
Maybe
being
because
so
it's
powerful that
too
led to all
powerful.
of the restrictions to Honest-like cards in the future. And at number 6, we have Necroz of Decisive Armor. This card has the effect where you discard it from your hand to increase the attack of a Necroz monster you control by 1000 until the end of the turn. Now, unlike Honest, you can technically activate this whenever you want, but it can also be used during the battle phase. And in an archetype that's all about the ritual monsters having both on-field and hand effects, as this card can also be brought out like a normal ritual monster. And then when it hits the field, it allows you to destroy and banish one of your opponent's set cards, which honestly isn't one of the best effects out of all the Necroz monsters, but it does have a pretty high attack, and it does have a pretty decent hand effect. You see, one of the
I do like how the Necroz monsters are all like retrains of different monsters. Like this is a retrain of Ally of Justice, Decisive Armor, which is probably the best card in every single one of the terrible Ally of Justice cards. Anyways,
strategies that Necroz decks like to implement is bringing out Necroz of Unicorn in order to lock your opponent out of extra deck monster effects.
Yeah,
which means your opponent usually wants to destroy Unicorn as soon as possible.
And generally,
they'll try to do that by attacking over
from the new
monster.
I think Unicorn from the new ban list is now at 3,
so
which is really good.
Decisive Armor in your hand can allow you to protect your Unicorn from most monsters in the game, as they would have to beat 3200 attack, assuming Decisive Armor was in your hand, which gives Necroz a little bit more of a boost when it comes to locking down your opponent out of using their extra deck monsters. Now, this obviously doesn't have the best Honest-like effect of all the ones I've talked about so far, but it's definitely one of the more useful ones in its archetype, which is a really good archetype. And at number 5, we have Elemental Hero Honest Neos. This card is specific to the Elemental Hero archetype and is very obviously inspired by Honest. Even though its effect is more like Colute.
Honestly,
and what this card does
most
is you can discard this card from your hand whenever you want to increase the attack of a hero monster by 2500 until the end of the turn. So you don't need to wait for the battle phase to use this card, just like Decisive Armor, which means you can get this card into the graveyard in order to use it for a Miracle Fusion if you want it, to both gain its powerful attack increase while also using it as a fusion material. It also has an effect on the field where you can basically discard any hero monster from your hand to have this card gain that monster's attack until the end of the turn, essentially allowing you to turn any hero in your hand into an Honest-like effect for this card, since this card can be used during the battle phase. Now, since the attack it gives is so high, at 2500, this effect has a hard once per turn on it, so there's no stacking it with other copies of itself like you can with Colute. Same with its other effect. Now, the reason this card is higher on this list is because it fits into its archetype very well. It can be easily searched out, can be used like an Honest during your opponent's turn to prevent one of your cards being destroyed by battle and giving it a whole bunch of attack, or to allow your heroes to beat over anything. It's more flexible in how you can use it since you don't need to wait for a battle to happen, and can just be used as a combo piece. Plus, even though you can't stack it, a single Elemental Hero Honest Neos is almost as good as using 2 Colutes anyway, which is really good when it comes to an honest-like effect. And at number 4, we have Prohibit Snake. This
Prohibit
card
Snake.
has the effect where if a Cyberse Link monster battles an opponent's monster, at the start of the damage step, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard to bounce your opponent's monster.
Ooh, that's
so
good.
unlike all the other honest-like effects so far, this one doesn't even affect any monster attack power values at all. It does have an excellent removal effect, which allows you to non-target, non-destruction remove a card from the field by returning it to the hand.
Basically,
this card is actually pretty valuable in decks that play Cyberse Link monsters, like Salamangreats, for example. They can just go into an easy Salamangreat Bale Links and then run into any of your opponent's monsters to get rid of it with the effect of Prohibit Snake. And it also allows you to protect your Cyberse Link monsters too, if your opponent tries to attack into them. But if that's all this card did, I'm not sure if it would really see the amount of competitive play it has. It's more or less its second effect that kind of assures its spots in certain decks. You see, it also has a graveyard effect, where if a Cyberse monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, and this card is in your graveyard when that happens, you can banish any other card from your graveyard to then add a level 4 or lower Cyberse monster from your graveyard to your hand, which, funny enough, does allow it to add itself back to your hand. Now, both of its effects are hard once per turns, so you can't send this card to the graveyard, add it back to your hand, and then use it again all in the same turn. You can add it back to your hand while also sending it to the graveyard in the same turn, but you won't be able to use its hand effect twice, is all I'm saying. And seeing as 30% of Link monsters are Cyberse type, this card is actually kind of live in a lot of normal decks.
I don't think many Link monsters are going to be
Cyberse monsters that see a lot of play in all kinds of decks. So
I don't think many monster there are some non-Cyberse Link monster types, but for the most part they're all Cyberse. But I don't think, whatever. Oh, there is a new Cyberse archetype coming out. It's going to be released. It's been released. I don't remember what it is. I'll probably do a thoughts and opinions video on it.
So, theoretically, Prohibit Snake could be live in decks that use those two cards. Although, realistically, it only sees play in Salamangreat decks, since that's the only meta deck that's basically nothing but Cyberse monsters. And at number 3,
there's the regular Cyberse strategy.
This card has the effect where if a Trickstar monster you control
really
battles
good.
an opponent's
is
monster,
amazing.
you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard to double that monster's original attack until the end of the turn. So basically like the Bujinji Crane of the Trickstar archetype, except Korobane's effect is a hard once per turn. Now, what's great about Trickstar Korobane is that it also has a much better first effect, where if you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand.
Good.
And with this card having 2,000 attack, that makes this one of the strongest cards with this kind of special summoning benefit. So it actually sees lots of play in different kinds of decks, and not just Trickstar decks. Although, funny enough, Trickstar decks do not really care about the battle phase very much, and even with an excellent card like Trickstar Korobane, they wouldn't play it very much. It saw much more play outside of pure Trickstar decks, and was more used in Trickstar decks that were splashed into other kinds of decks, alongside cards like Honest, since a lot of them are also the light attribute. Although Trickstar Korobane also has one of the harshest restrictions on its Honest-like effect, where you can only use either of its two effects once per turn. You can't both special summon this card and use another copy of it from your hand in order to double the attack during the battle phase. And you also can't use multiple copies of them in your hand to increase multiple different Trickstar cards' attacks for that turn. But the Trickstar archetype is really good at searching their cards out, and cards which can special summon themselves
Light Stage
are very valuable,
is so good.
They're generally great combo pieces, which is why this card gets a high spot on this list. It's more useful for the on-field effect, but it also has a good Honest-like effect. And at number 2, we have Alistair the Invoker.
Alistair the Invoker. Yeah. I have an invoked deck. It's good. I have an invoked Mech Knight deck on Dueling Nexus. It's good. It's a good deck. Maybe it's because I have Rainbow Neos in it. We're almost at number 1. I'm gonna pause it. Wait for this to go. Usually that works.
This card is the main combo piece in the Invoker engine, which allows you to go into all kinds of good fusion monsters.
Yeah, the invoked monsters are really good. Even the weakest one, which is Kalga, that one's really good. I think the best one right now is the OCG card. I don't know if it's in the TCG. It's probably, I don't know. I think it's Otogi's. It's probably in the TCG. I just don't know. So you just discard it. Target one fusion monster against 1,000 attack until the end of the turn. I think I used this effect on a Mechaba once.
As when it's normal summoned, you get to add one of your fusion spells to your hand. Then the fusion spell has a graveyard effect, which basically allows you to add this card back to your hand, and then it has another.
Oh, come on, we're almost there.
Other effect, where it can send itself from your hand to the graveyard to increase the attack of a fusion monster you control by 1,000. And none of Alistair's effects are once per turn. So if you have 3 copies of this in your hand, you can stack them all in the same fusion monster to give him 3,000 more attack. Now, that's obviously not as much as Kalute, but this card is much more useful and also just happens to have an honest-like effect on top of everything else it does. This card...
Yeah. Alistair's really good. Alistair the Mad Invokers. It's alright. Buffer.
Card just kind of does it all, and is also the most played of any of the cards in this list.
Obviously.
Which is
because invokes are really good. So, yeah.
Why it takes a high spot. And at number 1, we have Zodiac Whiptail. This is a Zodiac monster which can...
I'm not a personal fan of Zodiacs, mainly because every time I play against them with something else, I lose horribly. Also, I'm not a big fan of it, because it's not a true Xyz summon. If you're going to Xyz summon, you use 2 monsters that are the same level. This stupid archetype doesn't do that. This archetype ruined Xyz summoning. Its effect is you can attach it to an Xyz monster, and then if this card battles an opponent's monster after it, oh wow, that's a good effect. Because